All right, so if you remember correctly from Friday, the very first step in solving these absolute value inequalities is to make sure that our absolute value is all by itself before I decide and or. So in this case, is my absolute value by itself? No. So what am I going to need to get rid of first? The 2. Yeah, so let's go ahead and subtract the 2 over first. Remember, we always want to undo any addition and subtraction before we undo multiplication. Okay, so 7 minus 2 is 5. And again, we have to get it all by itself before we decide and or, because sometimes our inequality can change in the process of getting that absolute value by itself, and that will change our word. What else do I need to do? Yep, get rid of that 5. So we're going to divide both sides by 5. And so now I'm left with the absolute value of x minus 1 is less than or equal to 1. From there, it's exactly what we did on Friday. Decide whether you're going to use and or based off of your inequality. Set up your 2 inequalities. Solve each one. Go to your number line. Do the shading where it makes it true. Either one or the other or both, or have to be both. And then we can write our interval notation. So really the only difference between what we did Friday and what we're doing today is the ones Friday, the absolute value was already by itself. Here we have to do a little bit of work to get it there before we can set up our 2 inequalities. So based off of the inequality that is left, am I going to use and or? And, okay. So I'm going to come up over here to the side. So it would be x minus 1 is less than or equal to 1. And x minus 1 is greater than or equal to negative 1. Remember, flip the inequality, change the sign. And then we can continue to solve from there. Adding 1 on both sides. So x is less than or equal to 1. And adding 1 on both sides. X is greater than or equal to, what is negative 1 plus 1? 0. And 0 is okay to have on our number line. It is a real number. 0 is smaller than 1, so it goes on the left. And then I can look at where each one is true individually and then where they are true together. If I am less than or equal to 1, that is closed. Which, yes, because I can't add. Thank you. That should be a 2, not a 1. And then, let's see, I am greater than or equal to 0, which is closed and going to the right. Maybe. And then the word is and. Where are they both true? In the middle. My pen will write. Would help. And then to write that interval, what do I start with? Parenthesis or bracket? Bracket. And then I go from 0 to 2 with another bracket. Is everybody kind of okay here? Okay. So again, very similar to what we did Friday, with the exception of we have to do a little bit of work to get that absolute value by itself first. So I would like for you to try number 2. By the way, make something yesterday if you guys are really good since you were quiet and did your work, so I appreciate that. What's first in getting this absolute value by itself?
Add
The 3, yep. So I have 2 times the absolute value of x plus 1 is less than or equal to 10. And then what? Divide by 2, yep. So I get absolute value of x plus 1 is less than or equal to 5 and or. And so x plus 1 is less than or equal to 5. And x plus 1 is going to be greater than or equal to negative 5. Subtract our 1 over. So x is less than or equal to 4. And x is greater than or equal to negative 6. Negative 6 is the lower number. It goes on the left. I am less than or equal to 4, which is closed and going to the left. I am greater than or equal to 6, negative 6, which is closed and going to the right. And where are they both? In the middle. Parenthesis or bracket? Bracket. From negative 6 to, with another bracket, yep. Everybody okay? Not bad with these? Okay. Let me see. Okay. All right, write this one down. I want to work through this one together just for a couple of different reasons. So I have 7 minus 3 times the absolute value of x plus 2 is greater than or equal to negative 14. Do I do 7 minus 3 first? No. So I need to get rid of that 7 first. It is a positive 7, so how do I move it to the other side? We subtract it. Yep. Now let's be careful here. What kind of 3 is left? A negative, so make sure you bring that negative down with it. Negative 14 and negative 7 is negative 21. Now, we said we have to wait and make sure we get our absolute value all by itself before we decide and or, because I said sometimes there will be a change. Why is there going to be a change in this one? Yes, I've got to divide by a negative to get that absolute value by itself. So the rules still apply. Anytime I divide both sides of my inequality by a negative number, I'm going to have to take and flip that around. So it's going to give me the absolute value of x plus 2 is no longer greater than, but it is now less than or equal to 7. And then you can finish it from here. Had we chosen and or from the beginning, we would be using the wrong word. So that's why it's very important to make sure we get that absolute value of x, or absolute value of whatever's with my x, by itself before we decide and or, because it can change in the process of isolating that absolute value. Also, remember I told you last week the test on this unit is going to be next Tuesday. So a week from today. Test next Tuesday. So, like you said, I'm going to use and to write my two inequalities. It's going to be x plus 2 is less than or equal to 7. And x plus 2 is greater than or equal to negative 7. So I get x is less than or equal to 5. And x is greater than or equal to negative 9. Negative 9 is my smaller number. 5 is my larger. I am less than or equal to 5, which is closed and going to the left. I am greater than or equal to -9, which is open and going to the right. The word is and, so I'm going to shade in the middle. So we get a bracket, -9, 5, bracket.
Do we know if it's and or again?
Based off of the inequality once we isolate the absolute value, so based off of that inequality, greater than is or, less than is and. Is everybody okay? Just a couple more. All right, try that one. Is there anything to do to isolate my absolute value on this one? So am I going to use and or? And. So we're going to do x plus 2 is less than -7. And x plus 2 is greater than positive 7. So we can subtract our 2. So I get x is less than -9. And, sorry, my pen is not wanting to write very well. X is greater than 5. -9 is the smaller, 5 is the larger. I am less than -9, that is open and going to the left. I am greater than 5, which is open and going to the right. Where are they both? Nowhere. So we say no solution. And I saw some of you had that right off the bat because you recognize that an absolute value can't be less than a negative, which is good. Also, just remember on the graph of a no solution, just make sure there is absolutely no shading, no closed circles, and no actual shading on the number line for when we get to the test. Because even if you want to just erase what's on the number line or just leave it like what I have there, there's no shading there. I didn't actually go in and shade on my number line, so that means there's no solution. Is everybody okay? All right, one more. What do I need to do first to get this absolute value by itself? Subtract my 10. So that gives me the absolute value of x minus 5 is greater than negative 8. And or. So x minus 5 is greater than negative 8. Or x minus 5 is less than positive 8. I'm going to add my 5 over. So x is greater than negative 3. Or x is less than 13. Negative 3 is my smaller number, goes on the left. 13 is larger, goes on the right. If I am greater than negative 3, that is open and going to the right. If I am less than 13, that is open and going to the left. The word is or, so where am I going to end up shading? All of it, because when it's or and they go in opposite directions, that is going to be all of the number lines shaded, which is all real numbers, and in interval notation, that is negative infinity to positive infinity. Could we have said that from the get-go right here once we got that by itself? Yeah, it will always be greater than a negative because we can't be negative. Anybody have any questions? Okay. Your homework is 155. You're going to do 57 through 62 all, so that's like 6 questions.